Everyone tells you to chase happiness, but what if happiness itself is a trap? What if the Stoics knew something deeper, that meaning, not pleasure, is what truly makes life worth living? Think about how often you've achieved something you thought would bring lasting joy, only to feel the thrill fade away like mist in the morning sun. You bought the thing, won the praise, even reached the milestone, and yet an emptiness crept back in. That hollow space is where philosophy begins. The Stoics, living 2,000 years ago, understood what modern psychology is only now confirming. Happiness, as most people define it, is fragile. It depends on circumstances, on moods, on things that slip through your fingers the moment you hold them. Meaning, however, is different. Meaning roots you. It carries you through suffering, betrayal, and loss, because it isn't about chasing fleeting highs. It's about aligning your life with values, purpose, and inner freedom. In the next hour, you'll discover why the pursuit of happiness leaves you restless, and how the Stoic path offers something far greater, a life that is not just pleasant, but unshakably meaningful. Part 1: The Happiness Mirage. You have been told your entire life that happiness is the goal. Every movie, every advertisement, every conversation with well-meaning friends seems to point you toward the same horizon. If only you find the right job, the right partner, the right lifestyle, you will finally be happy. But here is the trap. The closer you walk toward that horizon, the further it seems to move away. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He was not dismissing joy, but warning that when you anchor your well-being to external circumstances, you build your house on sand. Think of happiness as a mirage in the desert. From a distance, you see the shimmering water and you move toward it with hope. But when you arrive, the pool has vanished and all that remains is the same dry heat. This is how fleeting pleasures work. You get the job promotion you longed for, and for a few days you ride the high. But soon the emails, the pressure, and the old insecurities creep back. The glow fades and you're left searching for the next milestone, the next mirage. Modern psychology confirms this cycle. Researchers call it hedonic adaptation. No matter how much pleasure you acquire, a raise, a new car, even winning the lottery, your mind quickly resets to its baseline. The newness becomes normal. What once thrilled you becomes ordinary. This is why people who seem to have everything still wrestle with emptiness. You know this in your own life too. That excitement after buying something new or after reaching a goal always softens into boredom or restlessness. It is not that happiness is wrong, but that it was never designed to be permanent. The Stoics did not reject joy, but they stripped away the illusion that it was stable. Seneca often reminded his students that pleasure is like a loan from fortune. It can be taken away at any moment. Epictetus was blunt. The only things under your control are your judgments and your actions, not the rewards of the world. To rely on happiness as society defines it is to surrender your peace to forces outside of yourself. Imagine an ordinary story. A man works for years in his company, dreaming of the promotion to senior manager. When it comes, he celebrates, buys an expensive watch, feels important. Yet within a month, the excitement fades. He now worries about higher expectations, longer hours, and whether he can keep outperforming. He is wealthier, yes, but also more anxious, more restless, more aware of how fragile his success feels. What he thought was happiness revealed itself as a temporary spark already extinguished. The Stoic insight is simple but transformative. Do not confuse moments of pleasure with a foundation for life. You can enjoy them, but if you build your identity on them, you will always feel hollow when they pass. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by power as Emperor of Rome, reminded himself daily that joy must not depend on the applause of others or the fleeting highs of circumstance, but on whether his mind remained in harmony with virtue. So what do you do with this truth? You begin by noticing the mirages in your own life. Where are you chasing happiness that fades the moment you arrive? Is it in relationships where you expect the other person to complete you? Is it in possessions that only briefly silence the deeper hunger? Or is it in the endless scrolling for distraction, hoping that a new image or piece of news will finally fill the void? When you can see these patterns clearly, you free yourself from being deceived by them. Your practical step here is reflection. Tonight, take a moment to write down one recent experience where you thought, if I achieve this, I'll be happy. Then ask yourself, how long did that feeling truly last? Days, hours? Did it fade back into the same restlessness? Once you notice this pattern, you start to loosen its grip. You are no longer fooled by the shimmering pool on the horizon. The Stoics invite you to stop mistaking temporary highs for a meaningful life. Pleasure will come and go as natural as the sun rising and setting. But chasing it as your ultimate goal ensures only exhaustion. The emperor, the philosopher, and the sage all whisper the same message. The happiness you seek is not in the world's shifting prizes, but in the steadiness of your own mind. When you understand this, you begin to see the mirage for what it is, and that clarity is the first step towards something far more enduring. Part 2: The Stoic Shift from Pleasure to Purpose. If Part 1 revealed that happiness, as most people imagine it, is a mirage, then the next step is understanding what to pursue instead. The Stoics did not simply strip away illusions, they replaced them with a vision of life that was both practical and profound. Where the world tells you to chase pleasure, Stoicism asks you to seek purpose. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." In other words, the Stoic life is not about adding more pleasures, but about aligning your existence with something you can truly own: your character, your values, your chosen direction. Modern psychology echoes this shift. Studies on meaning, particularly the work of Viktor Frankl and later positive psychologists, show that people who root their lives in purpose, not pleasure, report deeper well-being and resilience. When you chase happiness, you measure your life by how you feel in a given moment. When you pursue meaning, you measure it by whether your actions express who you are and what you stand for. Feelings rise and fall, but values anchor you. Picture the story of an Olympic athlete who trained for years with a singular dream: to stand on the podium with a gold medal. She came close but finished second. For a moment, she was crushed, because the dream of happiness seemed stolen from her grasp. But then she realized her journey was never only about the medal. It was about discipline, growth, and inspiring others to believe in themselves. Years later, no one remembers who won that race, but generations of younger athletes remember her resilience, her honesty in defeat, and the way she lifted others. Her purpose was never about the color of the medal. It was about living her values through her craft. And that gave her something far deeper than happiness. It gave her meaning. The Stoic shift asks you to make the same transformation. Stop asking, "Am I happy?" and start asking, "Am I living according to my values?" Happiness is a byproduct, not a goal. If you treat it as a goal, you chase shadows. But if you live in harmony with your principles, integrity, kindness, courage, then happiness arrives as a guest, not because you summoned it, but because your house is in order. You may already know the feeling of hollow success, when you achieved something impressive but felt strangely disconnected inside. That is the signature of pleasure without purpose. Now think of a different moment, perhaps when you helped a friend through grief, or stayed true to yourself despite pressure, or worked hard on a project that mattered to you even when no one was watching. Those moments may not have felt euphoric, but they gave you a quiet satisfaction that lasted. That is meaning at work. To live the Stoic way, you must begin clarifying your values. Seneca advised, If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Without a compass of values, you drift from one pleasure to the next, wondering why the journey feels empty. With values, every decision, every sacrifice, every small act of discipline connects to a larger purpose. So here's your practice for today. Take a piece of paper and write down 3 values that feel essential to who you are. Not what society tells you, not what would look good on a resume, but the principles you want your life to embody. Maybe it's honesty, maybe it's courage, maybe it's compassion. Now look at your week. Do your actions reflect those values, or are they at odds with them? The Stoic shift begins the moment you stop measuring life by fleeting pleasures and start measuring it by the integrity between what you say you value and how you actually live. The truth is simple yet powerful. Happiness evaporates, but purpose endures. You cannot control whether life hands you victories or losses, but you can always choose to act in line with what matters most. That is the freedom Epictetus spoke of, the freedom no external circumstance can take from you. And when you build your life on that foundation, you discover something even better than happiness. You discover the calm strength of a life that makes sense, no matter the storm. Part 3: Why comfort will never satisfy you. If chasing pleasure leaves you restless, then you might be tempted to think the answer is comfort. After all, what could be more desirable than a life without struggle, without demands, without pressure? The modern world even markets comfort as the ultimate prize. The luxury chair, the easy lifestyle, the dream of retiring early and doing nothing. But the Stoics would tell you this is yet another illusion. Comfort may soothe you for a moment, but it cannot sustain you. In fact, too much comfort often breeds dissatisfaction and weakness. Seneca put it sharply, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Think of someone who retires young with enough money to never work again. For a while it feels like paradise, no alarms, no deadlines, no obligations, but slowly the days begin to blur, without challenges, without responsibility. The very thing that seemed like freedom begins to feel like a prison of emptiness. The absence of purpose gnaws at them. Comfort, which they thought would make them happy, leaves them anxious, restless, and unsure of why they even get out of bed. The truth is that human beings are not designed only for rest. We are designed for growth, responsibility, and contribution. Modern psychology backs this up. Research on motivation shows that while comfort may reduce stress in the short term, long-term fulfillment comes from what psychologists call eustress, the healthy kind of challenge that pushes you to expand, adapt, and achieve mastery. Too much ease can actually increase depression and anxiety because your mind and body crave meaningful exertion. Without it, you feel lost. This is why some of the most successful entrepreneurs, artists, or thinkers never stop working, not because they need more money, but because they find energy and joy in the struggle itself. Take Maya Angelou as an example. She faced enormous hardships throughout her life, racism, poverty, trauma, but she never settled into mere comfort. Instead, she used her writing and her voice to fight for justice, to inspire others, and to give meaning to her own story. She did not seek an easy path, she sought a meaningful one. And because of that, her words continue to move people decades after her passing. Her life shows us that fulfillment does not come from removing difficulties, but from transforming them into something larger than yourself. The Stoics practiced this principle by deliberately limiting comfort. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, had access to luxuries beyond what most people could imagine. Yet in his meditations, he constantly reminded himself not to be softened by indulgence. He warned against letting the pursuit of comfort make him fragile, because he knew life would demand resilience. Epictetus, who had been a slave, taught his students to practice discomfort, fasting, sleeping on the floor. exposing themselves to cold not to punish themselves, but to remind themselves that true strength does not depend on luxury. When you train your mind and body to live without comfort, you gain freedom from fear. You might notice this in your own life. Think of the times you've been most proud of yourself. Was it when you were sitting comfortably on the couch, or when you overcame something difficult, studying for an exam, training for a race, taking care of someone you love? Comfort is pleasant, but meaning is found in struggle embraced, not avoided. Here's a practice you can try. For the next 7 days, choose one small comfort to give up. It could be scrolling on social media late at night, or indulging in online shopping, or always reaching for sweets after dinner. Notice what happens. At first, you may feel restless, deprived, even uncomfortable. But slowly, you may discover something unexpected. The discomfort sharpens you. It reminds you that you are not controlled by your cravings. It reconnects you with a sense of freedom. By limiting comfort, you expand your capacity for strength. The Stoic truth is that a life built on comfort alone will never satisfy you, because you were not made only for ease. You were made to grow, to serve, to contribute, and to live in accordance with your higher self. Comfort can be enjoyed in moderation, but when it becomes your goal, it leaves you empty. Seneca. Marcus and Epictetus all knew this. The more you cling to comfort, the more fragile you become. The more you embrace meaningful challenge, the stronger and freer you grow. Part 4: The Stoic Path to a Meaningful Life. By now, you can see the pattern clearly. Chasing pleasure leaves you empty, and chasing comfort leaves you restless. The Stoics understood this truth long before modern psychology gave it new language. What you really crave is not happiness, but a life that makes sense, a life of meaning. For the Stoics, this deeper fulfillment had a name: eudaimonia. The word is often translated as flourishing or living in harmony with your highest self. It is not about feeling good all the time. It is about aligning your actions with reason, virtue, and nature itself. It is about becoming the kind of person who, when faced with life's storms, can stand firm without collapsing. Marcus Aurelius captured this spirit in one of his most direct reminders: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Notice the shift. Philosophy for him was not about debating definitions or chasing happiness, but about living. It was about embodying principles in daily action. And this is the heart of the Stoic path to a meaningful life. You don't find meaning in abstract ideas. You build it through responsibility, discipline, and the willingness to live for something greater than yourself. Think of an ordinary but powerful story. Imagine someone who spends years caring for their aging parents as illness slowly erodes their health. Day after day, they sacrifice their own comforts, their free time, even their personal ambitions to provide love and care. There are no parties, no ecstatic highs, no external rewards. In fact, at times the work feels exhausting, even invisible. But when you look at their life closely, you see a depth that pleasure could never provide. They are living with meaning. Their actions embody compassion, duty, and love. And though the path is not easy, it shapes their character into something unshakable. Modern psychology points to the same truth. Research from psychologists like Martin Seligman shows that meaning comes not from pleasure but from responsibility and contribution. People who dedicate themselves to causes beyond themselves, family, community, creativity, justice, report deeper life satisfaction and resilience. Trauma survivors who reframe their suffering into service for others often find a sense of purpose that no amount of comfort could ever provide. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of the concentration camps, wrote that those who survived were often the ones who found a why to live for, even when every how was unbearable. This is why the Stoics place responsibility at the center of life. You are not here simply to consume or to avoid pain. You are here to grow into the person your highest values demand. Seneca reminded his students that it is not enough to live long, what matters is to live well. And living well means living with integrity, courage, justice, and wisdom. These are the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism, and they form the scaffolding of a meaningful life. But how do you apply this in your own life, in a world that often pushes you toward distraction and superficial goals? You begin by shifting your daily focus from what will make me happy today to what will make me whole today. That question transforms how you spend your time, how you make decisions, and how you see yourself. If you choose honesty over convenience, service over self-indulgence, discipline over comfort, you begin to accumulate a life story that makes sense, a narrative that feels solid rather than hollow. Consider Maya Angelou again, but this time not just her success as a writer. Think of her courage to use her words for justice, to speak when silence was easier. Her life was not defined by comfort or unbroken happiness. It was defined by meaning, by the decision to turn personal pain into universal truth, to shape her suffering into art and advocacy that gave hope to others. She lived the Stoic principle without naming it. Meaning comes when you live for something greater than your own fleeting emotions. The Stoic path also requires discipline, but not the harsh, joyless kind you might imagine. Discipline for the Stoics is not about punishing yourself. It is about aligning your actions with your highest values even when it is inconvenient. Marcus Aurelius would rise each morning, reminding himself that he was not born for luxury but for duty, not for endless sleep but for the work of being human. You too can create this discipline in small ways, waking up and asking what is within your control, refusing to let trivial irritations dictate your mood. Practicing gratitude even when life feels heavy. Each small act strengthens the foundation of meaning. Another essential layer of meaning is connection. The Stoics were not isolated monks detached from humanity. They believed in cosmopolis, the idea that you are a citizen of the world, connected to others by shared reason and shared humanity. Meaning deepens when you live not only for yourself but in service to others. It could be raising your children with love, building something that benefits your community, or simply choosing kindness in a harsh world. Every act of connection plants seeds of meaning. So what does this look like in practice? Begin by asking yourself, what is one responsibility I have been avoiding because it feels heavy, and how might I embrace it as a source of meaning? Maybe it's caring for a relative, maybe it's committing to your craft with more seriousness, maybe it's confronting a difficult truth in your relationship. Whatever it is, remember that the path to meaning often feels harder in the moment, but lighter in the soul. Pleasure feels good now and empty later. Responsibility feels heavy now, but nourishing later. The Stoic path is not about eliminating joy, it is about seeking a joy that is deeper than moods. It is the quiet joy of knowing you are living in harmony with your values, of knowing that when your time comes to leave this world, you will not regret a life wasted on shallow pursuits. You will have built something stronger, a character that endures, a contribution that matters, and a sense of calm that no storm can steal. This is the promise of Stoicism, not happiness as the world sells it, but meaning as your soul craves it. And when you walk this path, you discover a paradox. By no longer chasing happiness, you find a steadier kind of joy waiting for you along the way. The Stoic formula, building a life that can't be shaken. You have now walked through the illusions and the truths the Stoics wanted you to see. First, you learn that happiness, as most people define it, pleasure, success, comfort, is a mirage. It appears promising but fades as soon as you grasp it. Then you saw the Stoic shift, the transformation from chasing feelings to living by values, from seeking pleasure to cultivating purpose. You recognize that comfort, while tempting, cannot satisfy the deeper hunger of your soul, because you are made not for ease but for growth and contribution. Finally, you stepped into the heart of Stoic teaching, that meaning, not happiness, is the true goal. When you put these lessons together, you arrive at what I would call the Stoic formula. It is not complicated. In fact, its power lies in its simplicity. Meaning is built when you live by your values, embrace responsibility, and protect your inner freedom. These three elements form the foundation of a life that cannot be shaken. Your values give you direction, your responsibilities give you substance, your inner freedom gives you resilience. Together they create a life that does not depend on luck, applause, or external reward. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the quality of his thoughts shaped the quality of his life. For you, this means beginning each day with clarity. To help you live this formula, try what I call the 3-question Stoic reset. Each morning, pause and ask yourself, what today is outside my control and can be let go? What value do I want to uphold no matter what happens? And how will I act in alignment with that value? These questions do more than set intentions. They reframe your day so that your focus is not on chasing feelings, but on building meaning. Think about how differently your day unfolds when you live this way. Instead of resenting the traffic, you remember patience is a value you want to embody. Instead of obsessing over whether people will praise your work, you remind yourself that integrity is within your control, approval is not. Instead of chasing comfort, you choose to embrace the hard task because responsibility itself is what makes life worthwhile. Happiness may or may not come, but meaning will always be within your grasp. This is the essence of the Stoic formula. When you live by it, you are no longer tossed around by moods or circumstances. You have a compass, a purpose, and a strength that remains steady through change. You don't deny happiness when it comes, but you stop worshiping it. You learn instead to build a life where happiness is no longer the goal, but a natural consequence of living with meaning. And that, the Stoics would say, is the real measure of a good life. Why happiness still matters, but not the way you think. At this point, you might be thinking, but isn't happiness what everyone wants? Isn't it natural to desire joy, peace, and satisfaction? And the answer is yes, it is human to want happiness. The Stoics never denied this. What they warned against was placing happiness as the final goal, because doing so sets you up for disappointment. If you make happiness your destination, you live as if every unpleasant emotion is a failure. But if you make meaning your goal, then happiness becomes a byproduct rather than a demand. Consider it this way: when you plant a garden, you don't spend each day demanding that the flowers bloom instantly. You water, you tend, you cultivate the soil. The blooms come when the time is right. Happiness works the same way. If you tend to your values, nurture your responsibilities, and free yourself from the tyranny of what you cannot control, happiness emerges naturally. But if you clutch at it, it slips through your fingers. Marcus Aurelius lived a life filled with war, betrayal, and personal loss. If happiness had been his standard, he would have considered his reign a failure. Yet he measured his life differently, by whether he lived with justice, wisdom, courage, and self-control. By that measure, he found a deeper serenity, even amid chaos. So the Stoic lens does not reject happiness, it reframes it. You are free to enjoy joy, comfort, and success when they arrive, but you are also free to stand firm when they leave. When you stop chasing happiness as the purpose of life, you paradoxically find yourself more capable of experiencing it, because it comes unforced, as a companion to meaning, not as your master. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Nietzsche, you've seen it now. Happiness, as most people chase it, is fragile. It bends under pressure, it vanishes when fortune shifts. But meaning is resilient. When you anchor your life to values, when you accept responsibility not as a burden but as a gift, when you guard the quiet freedom of your mind, then you carry something inside you that no storm can strip away. The Stoics never promised you a life of constant pleasure. They promised something far more enduring, a life of dignity, of strength, of calm that no one can buy or steal. And here's the paradox: they taught that when you stop chasing happiness, when you focus instead on living with meaning, happiness often finds you anyway. It arrives not as the prize, but as the echo of a well-lived life. So the challenge for you is simple, but not easy. Stop asking, "Am I happy?" And start asking, "Am I living true to what matters most?" Because happiness fades, meaning endures, and that endurance is where your unshakable calm begins. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to Unshakable Calm. Leave a comment below and answer this question: what gives your life true meaning right now? That reflection is your starting point. Take it with you and live it.